If you like what you're about to hear, please consider leaving a review or liking, sharing, subscribing, commenting, and subscribing on YouTube. I don't know why I said it like that. I don't have a Patreon or enable ads for this, so if you really like Oldex, please do contact Games Workshop on social media or via email, and tell them you want me to narrate their audiobooks for realsies. Oldex, Codex Chaos Space Marines, 4th edition, pages 34 to 39, Forces of Chaos, The Law, Part 3, written by Thorpe and Alessio Cavatore, narrated by R.J. Bailey, with great thanks to Alistair for donating this copy of Codex Chaos Space Marines. Chaos Raptors. Chaos Space Marine assault troops are known as Raptors. They consider themselves an elite group of warriors, a belief that stems from the shock attack role of jump troops during the Horus Heresy. The Raptors have egotistically perpetuated this belief for 10,000 years. Within the Space Marine legions, jump packs were comparatively rare, but such was the effectiveness of these assault troops that their commitment to battle often proved to be a turning point. Able to drop from aircraft overhead or cross the battlefield with long bounds, the assault companies of the Emperor and Horus were usually held in reserve and then sent into action against the weakest part of the enemy line. The concept of preying on the vulnerable has led to the Raptors becoming vicious hunters who can strike anywhere at any moment. Many who join the ranks of the Raptors modify their armor to give themselves a more terrifying appearance, and the Raptors often fit amplifiers and voxcasters that emit piercing wails and screams. Their armor can be highly stylized, mimicking the appearance of a vicious bird of prey or swooping demon. All Raptors are easily identifiable by their large jump packs, with their arched intakes and thrusters. Units of Raptors fall upon the enemy like a shrieking, furious gale, tearing their foes apart with bolt pistols and vicious chainswords. Some Raptors exchange these close combat weapons with flamers or melter guns, allowing the squad to destroy enemy transports or drive their adversaries out of fortified positions. Having forced their prey into the open, the Raptors then strike swiftly and mercilessly, cutting their foes down when they are at their most vulnerable. While the Raptors may think of themselves as an elite, many other Chaos Space Marines consider them to be preening, self-indulgent egotists. Rivalry between the Raptors and other squads is commonplace, and often Raptors will not fraternize with other members of the warband, further displaying their arrogance. Whatever their personal feelings on the matter, most Chaos champions recognize the effectiveness of a Raptor attack and will gladly recruit Raptors into their warband. Having the services of such consummate assault troops outweighs the inter-squad conflict fostered by their presence. Some Chaos Space Marine commanders deliberately stoke the fires of division, believing that only through such struggles can the strongest prosper and the weak be weeded out. The Cadian Gate. The warp is a swirling and unpredictable place, crossed by eddies and currents and riven with storms. Around the Eye of Terror, where warp space and real space clash and strain with each other, navigation is even more fraught with peril. Although this prevents the forces of the Emperor from launching major attacks against the demon worlds of the traitor legions, it also effectively imprisons them. There are a few stable warp routes out of the Eye of Terror, rivulets and pathways that can be navigated more safely. Those that are known to the Imperium are heavily guarded, and none more so than the Cadian Gate. Situated around the garrison world of Cadia, the Cadian Gate is maintained by strange pre-imperial pylons on the planet's surface. Only here can the largest fleets enter or exit the Eye of Terror, making the Cadian system and neighboring subsectors the site of perpetually fierce fighting between the Chaos Space Marines and the armies of the Emperor. Obliterators. The machineries of the Chaos Space Marines include many monstrous, demonic creations, heaving with warp power and arcane technology. Not even the adepts of Mars possess anything but the most rudimentary knowledge of how these bizarre war engines work, and likely neither do most Chaos Space Marines. Yet there is a cadre of warriors who have dedicated their lives to the pursuit of alchemical and mechanical perfection through the power of chaos, and have turned their bodies into living weapons. These are the Obliterators. Often once tech marines of the Emperor's Space Marines, Obliterators are obsessed with the overlap of the material and the immaterial, the organic and the inert. They use arcane knowledge they have gleaned from the powers of chaos and the sinister adepts of the Dark Mechanicus to blur the boundaries between biological, technological, and demonic. Infused with this energy, they are hulking warriors that can fashion weapons out of their own bodies, grow armored plates, and repair injuries that would fell lesser creatures. They are inhuman, grotesque arcano-cyborgs, whose blood can become white-hot plasma, whose internal organs generate electricity, whose bones are fused with titanium, and whose brains are as much machine as living flesh. There is much speculation on the nature of the infernal bond between the Obliterators and the Chaos Gods. They do not sport obvious marks of allegiance to any particular deity, and do not bear the colors of any single legion or renegade warband. Although their exact numbers can only be guessed at, it is obvious that the Obliterators are exceedingly rare fighters. They exist outside of the warbands, moving from one to the other, exchanging their services for the opportunity to claim ancient technologies or capture exotic war gear from the Imperium and alien races. Some magos of Mars and members of the Inquisition have proffered the notion that Obliterators are infected with some kind of warp-based, demon-created virus that alters reality within and around them. These theories are highly contentious, for there is little evidence to back up these claims. Opponents of the theory say that a simple virus could not exist in the way it is claimed, and that it is simple demonic possession, in a limited way, that gives Obliterators their power. For those that face Obliterators, such discussions are irrelevant. Whatever the source of their unique abilities, Obliterators are much sought after by Chaos Lords. Whole wars have been waged to provide a cadre of these monstrous warriors with the archaeotech they seek, in return for future support.
Flesh and bone are weak and mutable, and yet the demonic is ultimately insubstantial and impotent. To be master of both matter and energy, and blend this mastery with ultimate control of one's consciousness, is to achieve true immortality, neither confined by the material, nor divorced from it.
Heretical teachings of Magos Eliza Couch. Khorne Berserkers. Kill, maim, burn! Kill, maim, burn! Kill, maim, burn! Khan the Betrayer. It was the experiments of Angron of the World Eaters that led to the creation of the first Berserkers. By careful lobotomization of his warriors, he removed all sense of fear and danger, and heightened the hormonal rush his soldiers experienced in combat. When the Legion swore itself to Khorne, the Berserkers were given full rein to exercise their bloodthirsty skills, and they have become the ultimate close combat fighters, entering an uncontrollable frenzy in the heat of battle. Those who wish to fully dedicate themselves to Khorne usually join the World Eaters to undergo the complex psychosurgery involved, but from that moment on, they are one with their angry god, feeling nothing but the desire to kill, maim, and burn. After the World Eaters' Legion disintegrated during the fighting on Scalathrax, most berserkers formed separate warbands, and many bastardized practices of lobotomization have spread to other Chaos Space Marine forces with them. Abaddon and his Black Legion, in particular, have recruited a number of highly skilled berserker surgeons to their cause, and of all the other legions, only the Black Legion is equal to the World Eaters in their perfection of this barbaric practice. Khorne berserkers are savage fighters who revel in the bloodiest hand-to-hand fighting. In their eagerness to offer up blood and skulls to Khorne, they carry many vicious close combat weapons into battle. Often they wield an axe, or, more preferably, a roaring, adamantium-bladed chain axe, as these are seen to be the preferred weapons of the Blood God, although the chainsword is almost equally favoured, and bare fists or a heavy rock will do if nothing else is available. The berserkers of Khorne relish their role as the Blood God's sacred destroyers, and are fanatical to the extreme. Their delight in pain and death is so strong that they have been known to attack their comrades in blind rage, and, if no other opponent is present, to even fall upon their own weapons as sacrifices to Khorne.
I salute you, for though our path has been long and bloody, you have served our Lord with unflinching courage in the honor of true warriors. We have seen many fall today, and must remember, even as we die, that our blood, too, is welcome.
Hearken, Iron Fist. The Dominion of Fire. In the mid-38th millennium, Angron, Primarch of the World Eaters, rampaged from the Eye of Terror at the head of an army of 50,000 Khorne berserkers. For nearly 200 years, the World Eaters burned and slaughtered their way across 36 star systems. Behind the vanguard of the Blood God's Chosen, other warbands followed, looting everything not destroyed by Angron's horde. In the wake of the carnage, the flames of war and rebellion burned across 70 sectors for a further 2.5 centuries, and saw the deaths of countless Imperial servants. Many Imperial commanders threw off the yoke of the Emperor's rule, and petty warlords reigned over the cowering populace. Eventually, 4 Space Marine chapters, 2 Titan legions, and over 30 Imperial Guard regiments crusaded to cleanse the fallen worlds. After a total of 7 centuries, 90% of the affected sectors were once more under Imperial law, and the Dominion of Fire was brought to an end. 1,000 Suns. When the 1,000 Suns escaped to the Eye of Terror through a warp gate opened by their sorcerers, their rapid evasion was not without price. Coupled with decades of harnessing the energy of the Empyrean, the warping effects of chaos began to take their toll, and mutations spread rapidly through the Legion. Ahriman, one of the greatest of all the 1,000 Suns sorcerers, attempted to halt this process of degeneration by unleashing an incredibly potent spell called the Rubric of Ahriman. Sealing dozens of demonic pacts, Ahriman intended to enchant all of the 1,000 Suns, forever shielding them from the mutating effects of chaos. In a way, the Rubric of Ahriman succeeded beyond all expectation, but at a cost none could have predicted. The Chaos Sorcerers of the 1,000 Suns either survived the Rubric of Ahriman and had their knowledge and powers greatly augmented, or they were utterly destroyed. On the other hand, their battle brethren, whose psychic powers had been slight or non-existent, were permanently changed. The armor of the normal battle brothers was sealed shut, as if every clasp and joint had been welded tight. Inside the heavy shell of ceramite and adamantium, the bodies of the Chaos Space Marines, had been reduced to a handful of dry dust. Truly, mutation would plague them no more, for their spirits lived on inside their battle armor for all eternity. Although these living suits still move and function, and can respond to orders just like a sentient man, they are little more than automatons. They quickly fall into inactivity unless a thousand-sun sorcerer is nearby to direct them, although in the blaze and fire of battle, something of their former battle hunger returns, and they move with greater clarity and purpose. The thousand-sun sorcerers use their rubric marines as bodyguards and enforcers. They make excellent guardians for the great libraries of grimoires and vaults of ancient scrolls held by the sorcerers, for the Thousand Suns Marines have no spark of curiosity and are utterly loyal. The sorcerers offer the services of their unliving warriors to those who promise them knowledge and magical power. In battle, the sorcerers enchant their weapons and those of their unliving bodyguards. The bolts fired by the Thousand Suns Marines blaze with magical flame and explode with sorcerous blasts that burn the souls of their targets as much as they do physical damage.
The minds of gods are not for mortals to know or to judge. Accept that Tzeentch has a place for all of us in his grand scheme, and be happy in the part you have to play.
Proclamation of Magnus the Red. Plague Marines. The first Plague Marines were warriors of the Death Guard Legion, trapped in the warp upon their spaceships when the virulent Destroyer Plague struck their fleet. Mortarion and his legion offered themselves up to the service of the Lord of Decay in return for having their lives spared. Their bodies became bloated and swollen with the corruption festering within them, but they no longer felt the agony of the warp pox and did not die from its horrific symptoms. Though many other Space Marines have dedicated themselves to Nurgle since the Horus Heresy, few ever achieve the ranks of the Plague Marines. Those who truly wish to join the most elite of fetid cadres swear loyalty to the Death Guard and their Primarch Mortarion. Only then will Nurgle bestow upon them the conjuring ague that created the Plague Marines. Outside of the Death Guard, a favored few sorcerers of Nurgle know the secrets of the Plague Marines, and Abaddon of the Black Legion has won most of these fetid spellcasters to his cause. For many favors and service, these blight carriers will bestow the gift of Plague Marinehood to the worthy who swear loyalty to Nurgle and to the Black Legion. Plague Marines have disgusting rotted bodies that stink of decay. The putrescent slime that oozes from their many weeping sores pits and corrodes their armor, but the Plague Marines are still fearsome, skilled warriors. Their decaying brains are inured to the agony of their bodily corruption, making them all but immune to any pain or discomfort caused by battle wounds. The Plague Marines prefer short-ranged firefights, where they can see the festering wounds inflicted upon their enemies, even while they laugh off the bullets and lasbolts directed back at them. Should the enemy close to within assault range, the Plague Marines can defend themselves with blight grenades. These contain virulent toxins that eat away at armor and fill the air with thick clouds of blinding spores. The most ostentatious blight grenades are Death's Heads, made from the 7 heads of fallen enemies. The brains are infected and pustulent, and maggots, slime, and other noxious ingredients are added before the head is sealed with ancient wax. As well as fighting in the armies of the Chaos Lords, the Plague Marines dedicate their lives to spreading corruption and decay. The plague fleets of Nurgle that spew from the Eye of Terror are captained by the Plague Marines, spreading contagion and pestilence across dozens of star systems. The plague fleets carry followers of Nurgle to inhabited worlds, where the Plague Marine's destructive raids are inevitably followed by outbreaks of no less destructive contagions. Once the plague ships are abandoned or their crews finally destroyed, the hulks float back to the warp, and eventually, perhaps guided by the hand of Nurgle himself, find their way back to the Plague Planet, where they are recrewed for new attacks. The Cloud of Flies. During a plague ship's journey through the warp, the interior of the craft erupts with large, furry black flies. They burst from every surface, covering the insides of the ship, filling whole rooms with their decaying carcasses. When the plague ship reaches a world, the champions disembark by atmospheric craft or by landing the ship itself. As soon as the transport's hatches are opened, a thick cloud of insects is released, each a tiny bearer of disease, ready to spread the foulness of Nurgle over a virgin planet. Even when the Plague Marines disembark by teleporter, enough flies are transported with them to form a dense cloud of choking darkness. Noise Marines. The birth of the Noise Marines goes back to the days and nights when Fulgrim and his Emperor's children first heeded the silky whispers of Slaanesh upon the world of Davin, just before the outbreak of the Horus heresy. In the warrior lodges of the Davin tribes, Horus introduced Fulgrim and his chief lieutenants to all manner of elaborate feasting and drinking, exotic narcotics, and other pleasurable diversions. Entranced by the ecstatic celebrations, the officers of the Emperor's children took these debased practices back to the rest of their warriors, and in this way the cult of Slaanesh took root in the Legion. Ever since then, the Emperor's children have sought to indulge every excess and depravity they can imagine, pushing the boundaries of their minds as far as they can, honing their bodies to the limit of blissful endurance. Dedicated to Slaanesh and every excess their bodies can experience, a Noise Marine's hearing is 1,000 times keener than a normal person's, and can distinguish the subtlest pitch in tone and volume. This affects the Noise Marine's brain directly, causing extreme emotional stimulation that makes all other sensations pale and worthless. The louder and more discordant the noise, the more extreme an emotional reaction provoked, until only the din of battle and screams of the dying can stir a Noise Marine. His mind ceases to function and becomes a mere receptacle for the sensations ignited by the music of the apocalypse and the shrieks of the wounded as they dance upon the path of destruction. Noise Marines wear armor painted in a variety of bold colors, as the Noise Marine senses are so distorted that only the most extravagant colors and patterns register on their minds. They are armed with a variety of outlandish weapons, the Sonic Blaster, Blastmaster, and Doom Siren, that produce deafeningly loud, psychosonically and pyrotechnically explosive attacks. You have been listening to Oldex, Codex Chaos Space Marines, 4th edition, pages 34 to 39, Forces of Chaos, The Law, Part 3, written by Gav Thorpe and Alessio Cavatore, narrated by R.J. Bailey. With great thanks to Alistair for donating this copy of Codex Chaos Space Marines. Thank you to Gav Thorpe and Alessio Cavatore for writing the fiction I grew up with. If you've enjoyed this, please leave a review where you found it, or like, share, and subscribe on YouTube, depending how you're listening. I don't have a Patreon or enable ads for this, so if you really like Oldex, please do contact Games Workshop on social media or via email and tell them you want me to narrate their audiobooks for realsies. This production, like all of Oldex, is entirely unofficial and uncommercial, from an out-of-print publication, is a derivative work with all copyrights owned by Games Workshop, and is a celebration of the hobby and lore I grew up with. If you have suggestions for other old Codex fiction for me to narrate on this podcast, you can comment, contact me on Twitter at rjbailey, or email robertjbailey@gmail.com. Links are in the show description.